Hi, this video is going to help with section 13.1 in Algebra 2, where you're exploring periodic data. So let's look at what the idea of periodic data is. A periodic function is a function that repeats a pattern of y values, that's your outputs, at regular intervals. So it's a function that repeats a pattern of y values at a regular interval. All right, so let me show you an example of one so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. It has regular intervals of y values. What is a periodic function? We typically look at them as sine, cosine, tangent. It's those trig functions that form this periodic function. They also draw some random functions and stuff too. There's two or three things that we'll talk about with the periodic functions. The first two are cycle and period. A cycle is one complete pattern. So for this, I colored it kind of in red. When do I get back to the same spot is one complete cycle. So we went up, back down, back here, and now it's going to start that same pattern over. So this is one complete cycle here. And then a period is the horizontal length, so horizontal distance along the x-axis. So for this example, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Your period is 4. Okay, and so you figure out how long one cycle is, and then you could figure out that period, that length. Okay, and then we decide if something is periodic function or not. So let's look at this one and we'll know that's our cycle, and then we can see that the period is 4. Here is another example. Is this function a periodic function, yes or no kind of question? So basically, see how this pattern is going upward? It's not staying consistent of regular intervals. It's getting up higher, higher, higher. So this is not a periodic function. So a function is going to stay coming up and down of some kind of pattern. Usually there's circles with sine, cosine, tangent, but it could be a pattern with this type of shape, but it would need to stay consistent so that you could see that distance this way as well. Okay, so the next two definitions that we're going to have of these periodic functions. So see this one I drew, and it has this one I drew. It is similar to the one we just looked at, but see how it's not getting bigger up. It's not like growing. It's uh it's an interval here that's not curved. Okay, so the other two things that we have to talk about is the midline. This is a horizontal line between the maximum and the minimum. So for this one, this example, it's the x-axis, which is common for the x-axis to be that midline. And the amplitude is basically going to tell you how fat this is this way, but it's half the distance. So you have to find that midline, and the amplitude on this one would be 1. Okay, so they have um, a formula for the amplitude that they give you in the book. They say it's half that maximum minus the minimum, which is -1. So 1 and -1 subtracted, right? And then half of that, which gives us 1. So in this picture, I don't really need to think about the formula. Basically, you're trying to just find this distance here. You can use the formula if it's like, decimals and fractions and you can't quite find that midline. So the midline on this one is y equals 0. Okay. And the period, if we were going to talk about the period, it's 4. Remember, the period is, let's go through one full cycle. So if I start up here, one full cycle would get me here, and you could see 1, 2, 3, 4 to get back to that same spot. So the period is 4 and the amplitude is 1. Okay, here's another example. of a periodic function, and let's go through all of the definitions that we've talked about. First of all, let's look at what the cycle is. So if I start up, when am I up again is here, right? So there's a full cycle, and this is going counting all the way up to 8. So my period is going to be 8. Right? What's my amplitude? I'm going to cover that back up so you can't see it. Well, where would be the midline? The midline is still right here at y equals 0. So the highest point's at 4, lowest point's at -4. So you can see um, that the amplitude is 4. One way to find that is you could take that highest number, 4, minus that lowest number, the -4, which becomes a plus, and then half of it would give you 4. Or you could count it, but we could see it on this one. And the midline is still y equals 0. It's that x-axis. And the period is 8. So that's what you're studying, and this one is just these basic ideas of periodic functions. Hopefully you found this video helpful.